I'm Susan Wise Bauer. I'm the author of the Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind series, and I'm here with my colleague and co-author, Jessica Otto, who teaches grammar classes at the Well-Trained Mind Academy using this series. And we're very excited to bring you a new addition to the series, the Diagramming Dictionary. So this is this wonderful reference work that shows you how to diagram every part of a sentence you could possibly think of. And Jess, this really grew out of your interaction with students and parents in the classes.
It did. So I do use these books in my classroom, and I found that if a student wanted to know how to diagram a particular item, let's say a prepositional phrase, and the student wasn't sure where to put it in the diagram, he or she would have to look through all of these
many pages.
Many pages. And often the parent and or the student would become frustrated. So I thought it would be wonderful to consolidate all of the diagrams. I use examples drawn right from our workbooks and our instructor's guide and put them in one easy-to-use reference guide. So the student could go to the table of contents and look up prepositional phrases and go right to the diagram of the preposition.
And get an example.
And have an example.
Right there. So because in the grammar program, diagramming is very important. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But we do a lot of things other than diagramming in here. There's a lot of different kinds of exercise. But the diagramming seems to be the thing that students are the least familiar with, and parents are the least familiar with, and what they need the most help in remembering how to do.
It is. And I find that if they can look in this reference guide and have confidence that they are looking at the correct example of a diagram, it really builds their confidence. And many parents have never had diagramming experience, so it's an excellent reference guide to help them feel more confident in teaching it to their students.
And it says that, I mean, unless parents out there listening to me have been to parochial school, you probably didn't learn how to diagram. And I think that's a really great loss, because diagramming is such an important tool in understanding the English language. We find that students tend to either learn better through pictures or through words. And of course, you need to be able to learn in both ways. But so much of grammar instruction is word-based. You're memorizing roles, you're looking at sentences, you're writing your work, you're circling and drawing lines in sentences. When you put those words on a diagram, you're drawing a picture of the logical relationships between the different parts of the sentence. And we find that our students, particularly those who are sort of math and engineering based, really find that useful to be able to draw a schematic of how grammar works. In my experience with teaching, a student can also often identify every part of a sentence, can even underline, circle, and label it, but still not truly understand how the sentence works, what the internal dynamic is, unless they learn how to diagram it. So it's really, it's a way of bringing grammar knowledge into like a different part of the brain.
So let me give you an example of a sentence from the Diagramming Dictionary. One of the sentences in the book is, Caleb climbed a tree with thick branches. So the student might understand that with thick branches is a prepositional phrase, but might not understand what word in the sentence that prepositional phrase is modifying. So by diagramming, the student can have a visual representation of the sentence and see that with thick branches modifies the noun tree because it attaches directly underneath.
And this becomes very important when we're talking about misplaced modifiers, which we have a number of lessons on this, where if you don't connect the prepositional phrase to the correct word in the sentence, you can get some very strange meanings, which are unintended.
Quite humorous.
Yes, they can. So as well as being just a good tool for understanding grammar, I find that diagramming is this invaluable diagnostic tool. So when you're first learning how to diagram, you're not going to be able to use diagramming in this way. But once you're comfortable with diagramming and you know where on a diagram to put different elements of the sentence, you can use it to figure out why your own sentences aren't working properly. So one of the examples that I use when I talk about diagramming is the sentence. This is sort of a typical middle grade construction. In addition to the city, Theodore Dreiser depicts the lives of poor characters. So you can label all of that. In addition to the city is a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases are tricky. But unless you diagram the sentence, you're not going to realize that in addition to the city doesn't actually modify anything in the sentence. When you diagram the sentence, you realize you can't hook it on to any particular word. It doesn't make sense. There's a thought problem there. The student knows that Dreiser writes about the city, but he's not really sure how that fits into what he's trying to say, so he just sort of plops it on the beginning of the sentence. Diagramming helps you find that sort of problem. And grammar problems, I find, tend to be thought problems. So once the student realizes that that phrase doesn't fit on the diagram, he has to realize that his thinking isn't clear yet. He doesn't really know what he's trying to say. So diagramming takes a lot of analytical thought. It takes a real awareness, not only of how English works, but of what exactly you're trying to say. Yeah, if you can't diagram a sentence clearly, then you haven't thought through it clearly. So this is, as an additional benefit, if you, the parent, want to improve your own writing, I would highly, highly recommend the use of this for you. If you can learn to diagram your own sentences, then you can find out why maybe they're not as clear, as sparkling, as persuasive as you want them to be. Yeah. Now, having said that, we'd like to give you a couple of tips on how to use this. It's a reference book. It's not a workbook. These are our workbooks.
Correct.
This is a reference guide.
It is a true dictionary. So one of my favorite features of this book is that you can look up any topic that you wish to diagram.
Because we have an extensive appendix.
We do. So let's go back to that example of the prepositional phrase. You could look up prepositional phrases, and then it would give you the page number. You go right to that page, and that sentence, Caleb climbed a tree with thick branches, would be written out for you, and the element that you are focusing on diagramming is in green.
I'm so excited about color. We have color in the book, yes. It really just makes everything clear, because when you look at the sentence, you know exactly what it is that you're identifying.
You do. And in every sentence in the book, we have underlined the simple subject once and the simple predicate twice, so that the student can start with the basic bones structure of the sentence and then add on from there.
Absolutely. Now, every single diagram has an example sentence that goes with it. Every single rule has both a diagram and an example sentence.
Yes. And what I love is that we use sentences that students can understand and enjoy. Many diagramming books out there use very complicated or archaic sentences that the students can't really grasp. So we went through all of our workbooks and the instructor text and chose the best sentence.
And we also, in the foreword, cover some questions that we often get from parents about diagramming. We talk about why diagramming is important, so there's, a little bit more extended explanation, similar to the one that I just gave you. But then also we talk about the sort of the nuts and bolts of diagramming. A lot of parents say to us, my kids' diagrams don't look like the one in the book. And that's because we had a professional calligrapher do beautiful, beautiful diagrams. Yeah, your kids are not going to look like that. Mine don't look like that. I hand wrote out all of the original diagrams before they were calligraphied, and we actually have in the foreword an example of what my sentence looks like before it was prettified. And your kid's sentence aren't going to look as good as mine. I mean, I actually have horrible handwriting, which my mother still is kind of embarrassed by. But you've got a middle school student, that is going to be one messy diagram. It doesn't matter. What's important is that all of the words attach to each other in the right way. We say there are a few things that are important. For example, subject and predicate line has to go all the way through the horizontal, because object and predicate nominative and predicate adjective lines don't go all the way through. Prepositional phrases need to have a little tail after the preposition because, for example, if I say I'm going to give the book to Jess, that's a preposition, but if I say to sit here and talk to Jess is very pleasant, that's actually an infinitive. So and we don't put a tail on, to sit. So there are a few things like that that we point out to you as important, but if we don't point it out as important, it's not important and you don't have to worry about it. There will be erasures, there will be scribbling. I myself have often begun to diagram a sentence and then realized I have to tape a second piece of paper on because I oriented the sentence in the wrong way. Remember that the value in diagramming is in the process, it's not really in the finished product. So that's not something you have to worry about.
Absolutely. And when I am grading diagrams that my middle school students have submitted to me, I am never looking for perfection. I am looking for the essentials of the sentence. And they could get part of the diagram correct and part of it wrong, but they still should get credit for doing that part.
Doing that, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we do recommend this as an additional resource if you're using the Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind series, but you can actually use it with any grammar program, because it's been one of my sort of, conundrums in recommending programs, is that there are some good grammar programs out there that kind of check off most of my boxes, but they don't do any diagramming. So you could use this as a supplement.
Yes.
I'm just excited to make this easy to use, clear resource available, because for years I've been looking for a good diagramming handbook and there just hasn't been one out there. Either they're integrated into other programs, or they're not clear enough in how they express why you diagram certain constructions in certain ways. This is the only resource that I know of that does this.
I agree. I have seen a real need for it in my classroom. And I'm excited for both the students to build their own confidence in diagramming and for parents or teachers to maybe amp up their knowledge of diagramming as well.
Yeah. So, Diagramming Dictionary, new addition to Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind, but you can use it with any program, and we hope you enjoy it.